Awesome. Well, Shawn, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today. I'm excited for this one. This is super interesting. It's like one of those buzzwords everybody's wondering about is AI. And
It,
I know you've got a lot of experience with that, given your role and everything you do. And so I would love to just start out today with just a little bit about who you are, introduce yourself, what you do at Boodle, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely, Zach. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here. AI is definitely a buzzword. People seem to be putting it onto everything, which means you have to be careful now because a lot of times what people call AI is not AI. But that being said, my background, I started out at West Point. I was a computer science major. I will totally concede that the languages I learned to program in, they now teach in the history of computers class. So I did not code Boodle. We have a wonderful tech team who built that. I went into the Army, couldn't fall out of airplanes properly, so the Army ended up kicking me out. That was the late 90s. And I ended up in the dot-com era and was just building companies. Started out like everybody, a lot of people do, is just working for a startup, got the bug, and with a classmate of mine from West Point, started a couple of companies. And my career has pretty much been building companies, both domestically and internationally. I did take a little bit of a respite after September 11th to return to government service, doing counterterrorism work, mostly focused in Southwest Asia and Africa. But came back after that and went to grad school, and then got recruited by one of the Abu Dhabi or the United Arab Emirates sovereign wealth funds. And I jokingly call it my most well-funded startup. So they recruited a group of us to build the first ever global Arab energy company. And so in just over 2 years, we did $22 billion in acquisitions in 14 countries. And then all of us served a corporate role. I was the chief procurement officer working on supply chain optimization. Fascinating experience. A company grew big though, and I like building things. And so stepped away from that and went back to investing in companies, bringing companies overseas, and was actually about to head to Singapore to do work in the venture world there when my co-founder, who I met in the U.S. Army Ranger School, pitched me on the idea of Boodle. And at the time, he was busy running 2 companies. So he became the chairman. I became the founding CEO of the company. And we started building Boodle. And the original incarnation of Boodle 9 years ago now was focused on very traditional AI. So machine learning, data science, and was originally focused on the nonprofit community. So it was helping nonprofits find their best donors. So the one thing I left out from my background, for 30 years now, I have always served on some sort of nonprofit, typically either education related or veteran service related. And I get really frustrated with how inefficient and ineffective fundraising was. And so we wanted to build a technology and a company purpose built for nonprofits. What was fascinating is a lot of nonprofit boards are filled with corporate executives. Yep. And so as soon as these corporate executives saw how quickly our technology was helping development directors find good donors, they quickly said, wait a minute, you could help my sales and marketing team. And so we ended up going into the commercial space as well. And then 2 years ago, of course, as you alluded to at the very beginning, ChatGPT hit the world and generative AI became all the buzz. The unfortunate part of generative AI is that while it's quite a buzz, the majority of the workforce still has not totally adopted it. Yeah. No doubt hundreds of millions of people have logged in, created a haiku about their bowling team, and then really did nothing else with it. True adoption still has not occurred. The place where it has occurred at very high percentages is in higher education. Students are adopting it, and not just for their classrooms. They're using it to prep for their summer internships, to do practice interviews. I read a study where one kid said he used it to do better on date nights when he goes out. Oh, wow. It is incorporated into their lives. Yeah. And so it's one of the reasons Boodle decided to make a big move into the higher education space. When I was living in Dubai, I spent 3 years teaching as an adjunct at the University of Dubai, and actually went through the exercise of co-authoring a textbook. And I thought about how impactful this technology would have been as a professor and how much more I could have done as a professor in helping my students and giving more active feedback and helping their learning process. And that's how it's being received right now on campuses, not just in the country, but across the world.
That's cool. It's like a whole saga of of history and everything that you've done, and it's all culminated into this, this next age of AI. And it actually, I mean, the fact that you said that too, that ChatGPT was 2 years ago, for some reason,
Everybody does.
and I felt like it's so much longer.
Yep.
But I feel as though it's one of those technologies that just accelerates and accelerates and accelerates at an exponential rate. And so it's felt longer than it actually is. It's almost a reality check to hear that. But yeah, no, that's so fascinating. And I mean, as far as the stuff goes with Dubai, I have to ask a question personally. Did you get a chance to ski out there?
I did not. So unfortunately, and I moved out during the pandemic to Colorado, and I don't ski. I can't. I mentioned my accident in the Army on a parachute jump, and so I can't ski anymore.
Gotcha.
But I was at the ski slope multiple times watching friends, and I mean, it's amazing to walk out from outdoors where it's 120 degrees and 90% humidity and see people coming down a ski slope. So.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. It's like a one big refrigerator. It's one of the craziest stories I've got from being over there, was experiencing that, and had to know if you'd done it. So that's cool. Well, moving on kind of with the AI stuff.
I did scuba dive in the 5th largest aquarium in the world, which is inside the Dubai Mall.
Yeah,
which is the largest mall in the world. And there are, at least when I was there were 92 sharks in there that you got to swim with.
Yeah.
While people were walking in and out of the gap and other areas, and you got to watch and wave. So
that is super cool. Yeah, what a place. There's no shortage of money there, and they certainly they do everything bigger and more opulent than you could imagine. So,
absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, moving on kind of with the AI stuff. I know that you and I had kind of talked about this before we got on here, and I think really, as topics go and overall what we'd want to address, and what I'd love to get kind of your expertise and take on is, number one, AI for general business use, and then maybe niche and narrow that down to some of the faith-based, ways that we could approach using AI in ministry, for example. And so I would love to get, number one, your perspective on, the direction of AI. Number two, how people are using it right now, what you might recommend exploring for, several companies that may not have explored it. Really just an overall view here to start. And one of the other things I was going to mention, I have no idea if Xfinity is going to shut my internet off today. You and I talked about that before. What happened to the live stream if that happens? I forgot to say that at the beginning. I just want to preface that we may get shut off here. So, I figured I'd let you take the floor on kind of what that looks like in business right now.
Yeah, look, I mean, if anybody truly says they know what AI is going to look like in 10 years, they're kind of full of it. No, there's lots of people, including myself, who opine on what they would like AI to be able to do. But the reality is, one, it's growing at such a fast pace. And two, there's a lot of research going on. I mean, again, ChatGPT launched to the world 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was in research for 5 years before that. And very few people know about it. Just the people in researching and investing community really knew what the technology was supposedly going to be able to do.
Sure.
So what's coming? Who knows? What excites me, though, is that generative AI has become a bit of a gateway drug. So I mentioned, we had a platform that we were out in the market selling for a long time, and you would talk to a lot of people, and you could tell all they saw was a steel head with red eyes coming at them, right? Like AI was a Terminator. Or the other problem you ran into with more traditional AI, and this is still true today with traditional AI, not generative AI, is that it's used for work. It's very expensive, and a company has to buy it, and no one goes home and talks about the cool thing AI did for finding customers or finding new marketing materials or whatever else, right? Generative AI is very different. People do sit at the dinner table and pull generative AI out and ask it, we're going to the Maldives. What are the best things to do while you're in the Maldives? And boom, all these things come up. Things that used to take you half an hour, 45 minutes of Google searches, now Perplexity does it in 30 seconds for you, right? With a summary and recommendations. And now you can ask it and exchange and go back and forth. And so you have a technology that the closest analogy is probably the internet, right? Where people can get on at almost no cost to themselves and they can use it not just in their workday, but they can use it in their daily lives.
Yeah.
And that's where the game changer is. And so now what happens in this, I go back to what excites me, is that as people get comfortable with AI, and as people realize it's not a steelhead with red eyes coming at them, now they're going to be more open-minded to, well, wow, if this just saved me 2 hours out of every day, or took 2 hours of my mundane task away from me so that I can do the job I was hired to do, I can do the more fun stuff I enjoy, not the drudgery. What else could AI, more traditional, non-generative AI, do for me?
Yeah.
And so I think one of the biggest things you'll see in business is wider adoption of AI, which will we'll start with generative AI, but then we'll really develop as more traditional AI is able to expand within businesses and provide more powerful insights and actions for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking even just last night, we have at our church, there's a money course that's going on, and I'm always interested in biblical finance and how to approach that. And one of the things that came up in discussion was how to review a budget. What things can you take a look at, and what things might you be able to save on? And one of the topics that I brought up in discussion was to AI and ask what seems off, because it will find the stuff that seems a little bit high. It will locate that for you within a matter of minutes. Instead of having to call around or Google or research or whatever, you just throw it all in one swoop, and it does it. It's cool.
There is a danger, though, is that AI, generative AI, not traditional AI, but generative AI, I often equate to my 6-year-old son. Yep. He wants to please me. And he will lie to my face, not because he's trying to get out of trouble or anything, but he just wants to see Papa happy, right?
Yep.
Generative AI will do the same thing. I mean, I have had it just blatantly tell me something I know is wrong. And if you call it on it, it'll go, oh, you're right, I'm sorry, and it'll apologize, and it'll go through. So there is a very big trust but verify with AI. And it's one of the big advantages, and one of the reasons we push BoodleBox with organizations is that within BoodleBox, you're not limited to one model. So I will often, within BoodleBox, use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. I will get an answer, and if it doesn't look right, I can pull one of the other models into the conversation and ask it to basically check the first model. And then if I'm really still kind of struggling, I'll pull Perplexity in, and Perplexity will give you sources. And so now I can say, hey, Perplexity, ChatGPT said this. Can you find me sources for this? And if it can't find sources, I know ChatGPT probably made it up. If it can find sources, now if anybody ever questions me, I've got the sources, and B, I just learned something new. And I feel good about it because I've got the sources to back it up.
Yeah, the Boodle platform is crazy. And anybody who knows me knows I love subscriptions, but I hate paying for them. I will not pay for a subscription if I can avoid it. And I will proudly say, obviously with you on the call here too, and being, a partner of ours, I will proudly say we pay for this solution. It is one of the things that I am willing to shell out the money for, because I see extreme value in what's offered. And I think that's actually like a really good segue into kind of maybe if you'd be open to, showing a couple of things. I know we put a couple of ideas. Let me walk through some examples of how that looks.
Let me do, since I said that this can do both out of work and in work stuff.
Yeah.
Let me do both.
That sounds great.
I'm going to share my screen. We'll start out of work.
Perfect.
So a lot of people have heard about the image generation features that generative AI offers. Put in, give me 3 kids skiing, and boom, you've got 3 kids on a hilltop. What it can also do, though, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, is we can do image analysis as well. And I put a QR code. Anybody would like to follow this, if you scan that QR code, you will be asked to sign up. If you scroll to the bottom of the sign up, you can sign up for free. It does not, at the very top, it's going to look like it charges $20. There is a free option. We do have a free subscription. Just sign up for the free, and you're going to be brought into the chat that I'm doing. So it's one of the features on BoodleBox, which is called group chat, which is rather than me just having to do a screen share and you go back to your own little instance of ChatGPT or Claude, you and I can sit into a chat and talk to ChatGPT or Claude together inside the same chat. And so this code will get you there. And I am going to go to image analysis, and I'll show you a fun one. I will admit I like a good wine every now and then. And I used to be a huge Vivino user, and Vivino is great. But now what I'm able to do is I'm able to take an image of a wine bottle, and now I can go to Perplexity, and I can ask Perplexity, what can you tell me about this wine? And now Perplexity is going to go through the web and figure out what it can tell me about the wine. For those of you who don't know, Domaine Serene is a vineyard in Oregon. It gave a pretty brief summary here, but it gave me the sources. And so I've got several different sources that I can go to. The next thing that I can do is I'm able to go and ask Claude. I can bring Claude into the conversation. And we'll do Claude 3.5. Can you provide me any other details? And now we'll let Claude do its thing. And then the other thing that I can do, and I get a little bit more robust background on the vineyard and everything else. But now the other thing I can do is I can bring, we have a series of AI helpers. And so I can bring a sommelier bot in and say, what dinners would pair well with this wine? And now the sommelier is going to go through and tell me the various types of meals that I could look at. Duck breasts, mushrooms, roasted chicken, and grilled salmon. And I can tell you 2 of those 4 I have had, and it paired extremely well with it. So it did a pretty good job. Other image analysis you can do, and this really happened. So I had a friend who was traveling overseas. She was in a conference room waiting for a meeting. She was in China, I believe, and took a picture of this and wanted to know what it said. And so we'll go back to Claude for this instead of asking our sommelier bot to translate for us.
Although you might need that sommelier if you're trying to do some last minute Valentine's Day
there you go.
Plans and whatnot. That could be useful.
And Zach, that's the point, is this technology is not just limited to the workplace. You know, it is timely. When you're in a crunch, it can pull you out and save you hours on end. And so here you see this advertisement is about the urban forest. It's written in Chinese and gives all the contact details. I think about the number of years. I spent 8 years living overseas. I've been to over 50 countries. And the idea when I've been in some places is just being able to snap a picture and find out what something says would have been life-changing in so many ways. So I could go on. I've seen people do this where they take a picture of all the confusing signs when you're trying to park somewhere in a big city and say, hey, it's Wednesday at 3 p.m. Am I allowed to park here or not? And boom, it does the logic for you to figure out whether you're allowed to park there or not, or what parking pass you need. There's just so many imaginative uses that you could use. So now let's do the workplace, and let's do something a little bit more faith-based. So one of the big problems a lot of people have, I do, I don't use generative AI to write anything for me per se. I will use it to proofread, but I am the worst at taking a white page and turning it into something. I just, by myself with no brainstorming, it will take me, a half hour, 45 minutes to get a first page done, commonly known as the blank page syndrome. And so if you scan this code, it will take you to another chat, which I'm going to take you into. And what we're going to do is we're going to suggest an outline for the book of James. We're going to do practical applications for James chapter 1. And we'll also suggest some verses from context. All right. So if you've got that code, I'm going to jump over into the chat here. We've got a blank page. And the first thing I'm going to do is just ask it. I defer to Claude. The model you use is very much a personal thing. I know marketers who will not touch ChatGPT. They only use Claude. I know other marketers who won't use Claude. They only use ChatGPT. It's a very personal experience. I just find Claude to be a little bit more creative and humanistic than ChatGPT. And so I tend to use it more for first things I'm working on. So as you can see here, I type in, help me create an outline for the Bible, book of James, chapter 1. And we'll see what Claude comes up with. There we go. Now let's say I want to ask it to help me create practical application points for number 2, trials and temptations, right? And we go through it. And boom, there it goes. Starting to give me some great things to think about, things to work with. Now I can ask it to, let's say I need to create a children's Bible study. So now I can come in and say, create a simple children's Bible study and include a relevant craft. Let's see what it comes up with.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. I mean, the coolest thing about this is, again, it's just like, it's this massive time saver. And again, you've got to obviously check over all of this stuff. You can't use it as a source of truth. As Christians, we use the Bible only as the source of truth. But that being said, I mean, this is a great way to generate ideas, to kind of get your brain flowing, and then you can rely on the Holy Spirit for the rest of that. But this is just such a really incredible advance in technology that allows us to be more effective in maybe even, for example, this with engagement with crafts or activities for students to get them involved in what the Bible is saying in some sort of a passage. So it's incredible to see this. This is nuts.
Yeah. And I had talked to pastors and priests who were very anti-AI until they started to think about it as, okay, it's not going to write my sermon for me. It's not going to write my homily for me.
Of course.
But one pastor in particular I'm thinking of who uses like the same phrase for the same situation almost all the time, the same Bible verse. And I was like, you know what? I bet there's a dozen other Bible verses that would be equally good. And he started chuckling. He's like, people do make fun of me. They like the situation will pop up and they'll be like, oh, Pastor so-and-so is going to say this, right? And so we just punched in that verse and explained like, hey, when these type of things pop up, what other verses would speak well to this? And boom, there were a dozen verses, all of which he knew. But he's like, I just wouldn't have thought of using that because that's my go-to. He's like, I'm going to start incorporating some of these just to spice things up a little bit. Did he, was there anything untoward? No, it was, using technology to help him in ministering to the people he works with and being able to expose them to more. Here's another good quick example. So let's say you want to get a little bit personal. Here's what I put in here. My sister-in-law had surgery to replace her liver. The surgery went well. She's been making great progress. Last Monday night, she went to the ER, heart rate excessively elevated. She has an elevated liver enzymes. They placed a stent in. So you're giving it, the more information you give AI, the better it's going to do at giving you a result. The worst thing you can do is ask a very limited context question because it's just going to generalize.
Yep.
And so now we've put that in there. And by the way, I've stuck with Claude for all of this. We could have pulled Gemini in. We could have pulled, and we could have mixed and mingled, right? They'll work with each other in the same one. But boom, here's 3 comforting, encouraging Bible passages. And again, someone might have known all of these had they spent half an hour, right? But this is a family emergency. They're trying to take care of their family. They got kids at home. They got their job, but they really want to have something they can take when they talk to their sister, right? This is just brings it to the forefront and doesn't tell them they got to use all 3. They now can sit and go, you know what? I just think that, Isaiah really speaks more, or because of my experience with my sister growing up, this will speak more to her. And boom, being able to use it and go forward with it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think one of the other things I'd like to kind of discuss too is obviously, if you put all your information here, we've had the whole thing with DeepSeek where, there's everything from stolen data to, biases that are put in there and everything in between. What are your thoughts on putting personal data into something like this? I know you guys have a specific way of handling that, but I'd like to understand a little bit more about your opinions on that.
Zach, it's one of the most important things people need to remember. And we, for 9 years now, have always been very focused on protecting people's data.
Yeah.
We have always said that your data is your asset, not ours, right? And so people need to be very careful. If they have a personal account with ChatGPT, and I keep a personal account with ChatGPT just to monitor what they're doing and what the experience is. And when I signed up, it wasn't even buried in the 2-point font. It was big, bold, 10-point font. Anything you put in here, we're using. We own it. And what a lot of people aren't thinking about right now is all this searching they're doing, everything they're doing. ChatGPT at some point, as will Claude and as will the others, they're going to sell that to marketers.
Oh, yeah.
If you've done research on the Maldives, you're going to start getting Maldives advertisements a little bit down the road. What we've done at Boodle is everything you put into us goes into our vector database. It doesn't get dumped into the model. And so our policy is your data. We don't sell your data. We don't share your data. We don't market to your data. If you ask us to delete your data, all your prompts, everything you've done, we'll do so, right? Again, your data is your asset, not ours. And so we're very, very focused on making sure people can be comfortable, asking what they want, discussing what they want. One thing we have found in conversations with people, I've talked to people doing job research. I've talked to people going through hard times in their lives, talked to people in marital strife. They have told me and shared with me that they will put more and ask more candid questions of AI than they would another human being. Even and one person told me, even their therapist, because we all know a person on the other side of us, they're judging us in some form or fashion. They're judging us, right? Whereas AI doesn't feel like it's judging us, right? And so people, especially I've talked to job seekers who feel much more comfortable prepping for an interview, like being able to ask all sorts of questions and see what comes back with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, that they wouldn't necessarily ask an interviewer sitting in an interview.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing to consider there too, and obviously it was a softball question to you transparently, because I already knew the answer and I love that you guys do that. That's one of the main reasons I like using your platform over anything else. But I think also in that capacity, there is a little bit of a cyber threat, I would say, with sharing personal information like that. Something that needs to be potentially viewed as a security risk. Because if you're putting information like that in and it gets into the wrong hands and someone's somehow able to get it, again, there's breaches of all kinds and all sorts. Yep. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be super secure if you throw it into ChatGPT and they're the only ones that are using it and it might be for marketing. If someone gets that data and you've revealed personal parts of your life to that AI, you need to be aware that there could be some sort of a social engineering scam that could be, put against you if someone has that data. So there's a lot of things that you really need to be cautious of as you're putting data in here. But I think with what you guys have with Boodle and the fact that it's kind of pooled together, I mean, effectively, it's just going to confuse the daylights out of anybody who's trying to review it. It's going to be a lot of conflicting data from several 100,000 data points and whatnot. So yeah, not that you necessarily should still be putting all of that personal information in there, at least from someone who's cybersecurity aware and scared about that kind of thing. I don't know. Scared might not be the right word, but the right word. It's just something to be cautious of. But
Zach, what I tell people who use our platform is if you don't need your chat and you don't need the data you've uploaded anymore, delete it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you don't take your credit card to the restaurant and put it on the counter and then just walk away, right? You do the transaction, you put it back in your wallet, and you put it away.
Yeah.
So if you don't need it anymore, now we provide the security because a lot of people will use this in perpetuity, right? In the workplace, we know that consultants use this with their clients, right? They'll do an engagement and they upload all of the meeting notes and all of the presentations and all of that. So 9 months down the road, when a new consultant or a new member of the client team walks on, they have access to all of that. They're not trying to play catch up.
Yep.
You could think about the same thing in ministry. We see some churches right now that are using this technology beyond their staff. They're actually using this group chat feature as a way to communicate and market to their ministry.
Yep.
Right. So Now I take the sermon on Saturday, I distill it down to text after it's been recorded. I put it into text, and then I immediately ask AI for, hey, what are questions that parents could ask their kids on their way home to bring the sermon full circle, right? And now that's in a chat, and the parents can log in for free and be able to see these on the way home and talk to their kids about it.
Yeah.
And you might want that to last a little bit longer because maybe parents don't want to, or they want to talk about it over dinner. Maybe it's not on the ride home; it's going to be over dinner.
Yeah.
And so some of those might need to last a little bit longer, or they might need to be shut down sooner.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I think there's so much, like, this is such a dynamic platform. And I know we're at 30 minutes. Do you have some extra time to continue? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Yeah. I think the other thing that I really like about the platform myself when I'm using it is that these bots are set up to ask questions.
Yes.
They're almost set up as a consultant. And I think that that's really unique because it asks you the right thing. Because sometimes, I mean, especially with this technology really only being a couple of years old, when you think about it, most of us are unfamiliar with how to properly use AI. Those of us who are using it all the time, we get it. We understand how you have to put a very specific prompt in there. But I think what's cool is that the bots that you've got that are already pre-built, and you can build your own too. That's a new thing that you guys released. That's another topic. But the bots that are pre-made, they just ask you the questions. They say, I need to know this, 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 and this. And if you provide me that, then I will provide you with a result. And I think that that is fascinating as well.
So if you saw, I went down here because we defaulted to Claude. I clicked on the little X that was next to it. So no bot is selected. And what that does is it kicks in the recommendation engine. And so I typed in, hey, I need to build a LinkedIn profile. And what our recommendation engine will do is tell you, hey, there's a LinkedIn profile bot. But there's also a resume bot. There's a career coach bot. There's a job search advisor bot. So it'll tell you those tangentially related AIs that are there. And if I go to that LinkedIn profile bot, to your point, Zach, instead of me having to know how to prompt and what to say and what to ask, it is going to prompt me. It'll ask me a series of 1 to 8 questions to elicit out of me what it needs so that we can get moving forward on what I want to accomplish, which is building a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, like, it makes AI accessible for anybody. I think that's really the coolest part about it, is it truly puts you in a position where the AI is actually going to work for you, work with you, instead of you having to figure out how to use it. And that, to me, is particularly the most fascinating thing about those bots. So yeah. I've even built a couple on my own just to test out, and it's been pretty fun.
And then, as you said, with the custom bots, so I actually have one of my friends in the ministry space. He is taking 10 years of his pastor sermons and putting them in training, basically training a custom bot with them. And then a couple of things that he's doing. He wants the pastor to use it as he writes his own sermons to be able to compare historically and use the bot like, am I repeating something here? Is there something in here that I've mentioned way too many times? Or is there a verse that I've used repeatedly that I need to go find a new verse for? So it becomes a tool for the, because after 10 years, 52 sermons a year, there's going to be things you've forgotten, right?
Yeah.
But now he's able to write a new sermon, but then check it and make it the best sermon he can by putting new information out there, or quoting new verses, tackling things in new and different ways, or where appropriate, regurgitating something. If a point is worth making and it needs to be made again, but now he may not remember that he talked about this in October of 2020. And he can now bring it up because it's been trained on that sermon with that timestamp.
Yeah, that's really cool. AI just does such a great job with analyzing data. And that is at the core, it is so good at looking at those things, pulling them all together. And that is hands down the best use that I've seen, is being able to analyze what's happened. Even for us, when we have meetings of any sort with a client, we upload the transcript and we say, hey, provide a couple of action items out of this, for example. We've got some tools that automatically do that. But being able to have that is really useful because it allows you to be even more engaged in the conversation than writing down notes and, missing things because you're writing while they're speaking. So there's so many uses to this. It's endless. And I know there's a lot there. End of time here. So I'd love to kind of just get your perspective on a few things. Number one would be, one piece of advice that you would give to organizations that are looking to implement AI, maybe for businesses as well as ministries. So we can split that into part A and B.
Okay.
And then number two would be how viewers can connect with you. Number three, final thoughts, and then we could wrap up there.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So first and foremost, I would just say, as I mentioned at the outset, I hate to term it this way, but generative AI is a gateway drug to AI. And it's one where you don't need to spend, it's not like implementing Salesforce where you have to have stand down days and do training classes and multiple training classes. Like, you just need to give people access to it. And it's dirt cheap. I mean, we charge the same thing ChatGPT charges, $20 a month, except we offer ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude and all the others. And for churches, we actually, for nonprofits, we give a 10% discount. So they're actually paying less than their people would pay for ChatGPT. But just give people access to it. And then what I typically tell organizations, if you don't want to invest a lot of time in kind of pushing people towards it, just ask everybody in your organization to take 10 to 15 minutes a day. And I tell them, I guarantee you the first week, it's like asking someone to start going to the gym. It's awkward. It doesn't feel good. Your muscles are going to hurt, right? But what happens in weeks 2 or 3 is someone sits down to what they know is a 3-hour task because they've done it before, and generative AI turns it into 20 minutes for them, right? And that's their aha moment. And the reason you can't teach generative AI, like, okay, for an organization, do X and everybody will be set, is because everybody has their own daily workflows. Everybody is going to use this technology in their own way. And what I'll share very quickly, I'm going to share one last slide with you, is you almost can't afford not to do it. Here is the results of a nonprofit. This was a 70-person nonprofit. They gave us a 16-person pilot team. There were people from finance, there were people from development, marketing, and events. 8 of these people, Zach, had never logged into ChatGPT in their life, right? First time in generative AI. Yeah. By the end of the month, all 16 people were using it weekly.
Wow.
Now, because some of them are new, they only spent 27 hours on the platform. They documented 372 hours of work.
That's incredible.
2 ways to look at that. 16-person team, it's about a $300 investment they made for their license. For a $300 investment, that team got 2 extra FTEs for the month. Or the other way, for a $300 investment, they produced almost $20,000 more work. Yeah. So again, you almost can't afford to not be using this technology. And especially in the nonprofit, I tell this to nonprofits, if you want to show your donors you're using their money judiciously, that $20,000 is drudgery work, is overhead work that's getting done. Now that $20,000 is going to mission. That's where donors want to see their money, on mission, not on operations.
Yeah.
So, and within the church, it's the same thing. As I said, you start with a team because team's running on a limited budget. But then I mentioned a couple of the churches we have that are using this tool as a marketing tool, right? Because it's not just a work tool. It's something people are using. Most churches, I would bet, have a good number of people in their church who are already using ChatGPT or already using Claude. Now they can offer them those same tools, but offer it in a way that they can connect with them and further minister to them if they want to.
That's awesome. That is super cool. Well, great. Well, how can people find you? I know I've got a link in my little LinkedIn profile to.
Yep. I'll give you 2 things. One is very easy to reach me at Shawn at boodle.ai. It's SHAWN at boodle, BOODLE.ai. You can also scan this QR code here, and it will give you to my LinkedIn. I try to post at least once a week on LinkedIn, or a couple times a week on LinkedIn. And if there's anything I can ever do to be helpful, please reach out to me and let me know what I can do.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Shawn. I appreciate that. What an awesome discussion. That was super cool. I guess I nerd out over this stuff all the time whenever we get to chat. So thank you for hopping on.
Good news is, Zach, with the adoption of AI, 5 years from now, it won't be called being a nerd anymore. So
yeah, right. It's going to be like using Google.
Zach, thanks for having me on. It was a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Shawn. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.